I was used to keeping my head down. In Blackridge, that's how you survived. People didn't bother you if you didn't bother them. Quiet, steady, predictable. That's what this town was. But lately, quiet felt more like isolation, and isolation felt like a trap. That night, I was out on my porch, letting a cigarette burn down between my fingers while the streetlights flickered like dying fireflies. For a week now, something had been off. It started as a feeling, just a prickling on the back of my neck, but it grew into something more, something I couldn't shake. At first, I thought I was imagining it. I'd tell myself it was the long hours at the auto shop, the nights alone in my creaky old apartment, or maybe the late-night horror marathons I couldn't seem to quit. But then the messages started. The first one came 2 nights ago. "You looked good in that gray hoodie." I stared at my phone like it had just insulted me. I didn't reply, figuring it was a prank or some wrong number. But something about it made my stomach twist. I'd worn that hoodie when I ran out for takeout the other night. Last night, another text. "Your porch light's been out for a while. Aren't you worried?" The knot in my stomach tightened. My porch light had been out for 3 weeks, and I never got around to replacing it. How would anyone notice unless they were here? Unless they'd been watching? Tonight was the worst. The latest text buzzed onto my screen as I sat outside. "You shouldn't leave your door unlocked." My chest tightened. The door behind me was cracked open. I hadn't even thought about it when I stepped outside. Panic shot through me like ice in my veins. I crushed the cigarette under my boot and turned to look at the street, and then I saw him. A figure stood under the broken streetlight at the corner, just far enough away that I couldn't make out his face. My first instinct was to yell, but my voice caught in my throat. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring. I stepped back into the apartment and locked the door behind me, bolting it tight. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone again. No more messages, no missed calls, just the silence pressing in. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I didn't sleep that night, not even close. I sat on my couch with my phone in one hand and a wrench from my toolbox in the other. It wasn't a weapon, but it was solid enough to do damage. Every sound outside made my heart jump. A creak of the floorboards, the rustle of wind against the windows. By sunrise, I convinced myself it was over. Whoever was out there had their fun, and now they were gone. I even laughed at myself for clutching a wrench all night. But as I pulled open the front door to leave for work, the laugh died in my throat. Taped to the door was a single Polaroid photo. It was me, sitting on the porch last night, cigarette in hand, the soft glow of my phone lighting up my face. My hands shook as I ripped it down. No note, no signature. Just the image and the unshakable proof that someone was far too close. Screw this, I thought. I wasn't about to be someone's victim. I grabbed my phone and called the only person I trusted to help me. Eric, my best friend since high school. "Yo, man, what's up? You sound wired." Eric answered, his voice groggy. "I need you to come over," I said, keeping my voice low as if whoever was watching might hear. "What's going on?" "Just, can you? Please, it's serious." Eric showed up 20 minutes later, still half asleep, but dressed like he was ready for a fight. "Okay," he said, stepping inside and glancing around. "What the hell's going on?" I handed him the Polaroid without a word. His face went from confused to pissed in seconds. "Dude, who the hell took this?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," I said, pacing the room. "It's been going on for a week. Texts, someone watching me. Last night I saw a guy standing outside. Did you call the cops?" I laughed bitterly. "And tell them what? That I'm getting creepy texts? That someone stood under a streetlight? They'd laugh me out of the station." Eric stared at the photo, his jaw tightening. "Okay, so what's the plan? You can't just sit around waiting for this guy to make his next move." "That's exactly what I don't want to do," I said, pulling out my phone. "I've got a number for an old army buddy who runs security systems now. We're locking this place down, starting today." Eric nodded, but I could see the unease in his eyes. "You're sure it's just one guy?" I didn't answer. Truth was, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. By the end of the day, my apartment was a fortress. Cameras covered every angle, motion sensors lined the windows, and the front door now had 3 deadbolts. Eric stuck around, claiming he'd crash on the couch, just in case. I didn't argue. The first night passed quietly, almost too quietly. The cameras didn't pick up anything unusual, and I started to think maybe the security setup had scared him off. But on the second night, I woke to the sound of a loud thud against the living room window. Eric was up in an instant, wrench in hand. "What was that?" he hissed, pulling back the curtains just enough to peer outside. I checked the camera feed on my phone. There was nothing, just the empty street and the faint glow of the streetlights. But then I noticed it, a small object sitting on the windowsill outside. I hesitated before opening the door. Eric right behind me. The air was cold, and the silence felt heavier than usual. The object was a little black box, tied with a red ribbon. My stomach churned as I picked it up and carefully untied the bow. Inside was another Polaroid. This one was taken from inside my apartment. It showed me and Eric sitting on the couch the night before, talking. My face went pale. The cameras hadn't caught anyone. How had they gotten in? Eric swore under his breath. "This guy's not just watching, he's playing with you." "He's been inside," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My mind raced. We'd been careful. We'd locked everything. So how? The phone buzzed in my pocket, the screen lighting up with another message. "I missed you last night. You've made things too hard, so I thought I'd come in early." My hand clenched around the phone. The bastard wasn't just toying with me, he was mocking me, trying to make me crack, but I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. "Okay," Eric said, pacing like a caged animal. "We need a new plan. Cameras aren't enough. Let's go to his territory. Draw him out." "What do you mean?" Eric turned to me, his expression hard. "You've seen him, right? He's been out there before. Let's set a trap. Give him the chance to get close. Close enough that we can deal with him ourselves." I hesitated. The idea of confronting this psycho head-on made my skin crawl, but Eric was right. Sitting here waiting wasn't working. That night we left the apartment dark and empty. I stayed hidden in the alley across the street while Eric hung back in his car. It was hours before anything happened, but eventually I saw it, a shadow slipping toward my apartment. The figure moved with a deliberate, almost predatory grace. My heart raced as I gripped the wrench in my hand, waiting for Eric's signal. When the figure reached my door, Eric whispered into the earpiece, "Now." I stepped out of the shadows and the figure froze. For the first time I saw his face, a twisted, pale grin that sent a chill down my spine. The man's grin didn't falter when I stepped out of the shadows. It only widened as if he'd been waiting for this moment. He was lanky but tall, dressed in dark clothes that made him almost blend into the night. His eyes gleamed with a wild, unnerving energy that sent adrenaline surging through me. "Well, well," he said, his voice low and smooth. "I was wondering when you'd come out to play." "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, gripping the wrench tightly. My voice wavered, but I didn't care. The fact that he was smiling, no, enjoying this, made my skin crawl. "You can call me a fan," he said, spreading his arms theatrically. "I've been watching you for a while, you know. You're fascinating." Behind him, I could see Eric creeping out of the car, moving silently to cut off his escape. The man didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he didn't care. "Fascinating," I barked, trying to keep his attention on me. "You've been stalking me, breaking into my place and leaving your sick little gifts. You're a lunatic." His grin faltered for just a moment, replaced by something darker. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. You liked the attention. You needed it." I took a step forward, fury building in my chest. "You don't know a damn thing about me." "Oh, I know everything," he said, his grin returning. "Your routines, your habits, your fears. You're predictable but not boring. That's why I chose you." Eric was almost behind him now. I gave the smallest nod and Eric lunged, tackling the man to the ground. They hit the pavement hard, the man letting out a guttural snarl. "Get the hell off me!" he shouted, struggling beneath Eric's weight. But Eric wasn't letting up. "You've got a lot to explain, buddy," Eric growled, pinning the man's arms. I stepped closer, wrench still in hand, staring down at the man who had turned my life into a nightmare. For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. "You don't scare me," he spat. but his voice wavered. I crouched down, meeting his gaze. "You should be scared," I said, my voice cold. "Because if you ever come near me again, I'll make sure this ends very differently." The sound of approaching sirens cut through the night. Eric had called the cops earlier, just in case, and now they were here to deal with the aftermath. As the officers cuffed the man and loaded him into the back of a squad car, he looked at me one last time, his grin returning. "This isn't over," he said, his voice dripping with malice. But I didn't flinch. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange calm wash over me. He was caught, and whatever came next, I wasn't afraid anymore. I missed this road, though I never thought I would. The sun was setting, casting the whole desert in shades of orange and pink, like some kind of fever dream. I could hear the crunch of my boots against the dirt, the only sound out here besides the wind rustling through the dry brush. I had no destination in mind, just a need to get away. And I had been walking for hours. This place, though, it felt different now. It felt like the end of something. The same road I used to walk as a kid, the one that led to nowhere, now felt like the last stretch toward a dead end. Funny how memories work like that. This road used to be a path to freedom, a secret escape for my younger self. Now it was just a reminder of how far I'd fallen. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see him again. But there was nothing. Nothing but the long stretch of dirt behind me. I kept walking, but I knew deep down he was out there, watching, waiting. He'd been following me for weeks. It started small, just a flicker in the corner of my eye, a faint sound of someone trailing behind me. But now, it felt like he was right on my heels. His presence was suffocating, like a shadow that never left, even in the brightest sun. I'd tried to outrun him. I thought I could. But now, I wasn't so sure. He was patient, relentless, and I could feel his eyes on me even when I couldn't see him. Up ahead, I saw the old gas station. It looked abandoned, the sign swaying in the breeze like it was hanging on by a thread. It was as good a place as any to stop. I could use a break, some water maybe, and I could wait for him. I wasn't scared anymore. I was done running. I heard the car before I saw it. The low growl of an engine. The screech of tires on gravel. He was here. I didn't need to turn around. I knew it was him. He always made his entrance like that. Loud, brash, like he was trying to remind me who was in charge. I didn't look back. Not yet. But I could feel him standing behind me. I could feel the weight of his gaze pressing down on me like a 100-pound weight. He wasn't just following me anymore. No, this time he was here. And this time, I was ready. I didn't move. I just stood there, waiting for the inevitable. My back was to him, but I could feel him getting closer. Every step he took, every heavy breath he exhaled, brought him nearer. It was like this with him. Always a slow, deliberate pursuit. He wasn't in any rush. He knew the game and he knew the rules. He knew exactly how long I would last before I cracked, before I had no choice but to face him. The old gas station loomed ahead, a crumbling relic of a time long gone. The wind whipped the dried-out weeds around, but it wasn't strong enough to shake the dusty silence. I could feel the heat of the day still clinging to the concrete, the sun having just dipped below the horizon but leaving its mark. The place smelled like burnt oil and stale air, a reminder of the forgotten, of those who'd passed through here and left nothing behind. I finally turned around when I heard his footsteps stop. He was close now, too close, and I could feel his breath on the back of my neck. I didn't have to see him to know who it was. It was the same man who had been haunting me for years. The same man who never gave up, who always kept coming, like the night was his to command. His face was as I remembered it, all sharp angles and hard lines, eyes too dark, too cold. He wasn't smiling, but I could feel that twisted grin in the way he held himself. His body was thinner now, frailer, like age had started to catch up with him. But the desperation was still there, the hunger, the obsession. He wasn't just following me anymore. He was tracking me like a hound. Every step, every breath was calculated. "You really think you can get away?" he asked, his voice rough and low, like gravel scraping against metal. I didn't answer right away. What was there to say? I had been running, hiding, trying to escape for so long that now, facing him, it felt almost anticlimactic, like there was no point in pretending anymore. This had been coming for years, and now, here we were, the end of the road. "I've been following you for a long time," he continued, his eyes never leaving mine. "You thought I would just vanish? That I'd stop? That you could outrun me?" I clenched my fists at my sides, my knuckles white against the heat. "You don't get it," I said, my voice flat. But there was something under it now. Something colder, more certain. "You don't get that this ends tonight." His lips curled up into something that resembled a smile. "I'm not the one who's running anymore, am I?" No, he wasn't. I could feel the finality in the air, that shift in the balance. The game was over. It wasn't about outrunning him anymore. It was about taking control. I pulled the knife from my jacket, feeling the cool metal in my hand. He saw it, his eyes flickering to it, but he didn't move. Not yet. He was waiting, just like me. Waiting for the moment to strike. But this time I wouldn't let him have it. I wasn't running. I wasn't going anywhere. "This ends here," I said, my voice low, steady. "No more games." He stepped forward, his gait slow, deliberate, as if he were savoring every step. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. Not anymore. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. It felt like the world had stopped spinning, leaving only the two of us in a twisted standoff under the fading light. His cold eyes met mine, unblinking, but I could see it now, the uncertainty beneath the surface. He might not have been afraid, but there was hesitation, a flicker of doubt that hadn't been there before. I'd changed. I wasn't the same person he'd been chasing for years. "You think you can stop me?" he sneered, his voice still gravelly but with a slight tremor in it. "I've been following you for so long. You're just like the others. You'll break. They all break." I didn't flinch. "I'm not like them," he scoffed, a dry laugh that made my skin crawl. "No? We'll see about that. You've been running, hiding, pushing me away, but we both know the truth. You've never been able to escape." I took a step forward, my grip tightening on the knife. "I'm done running." His smile widened, but it was thin and almost sadistic. "Then let's end it." He lunged. But I was ready. The world seemed to slow as he came at me, his movements just a blur of desperation and rage. I didn't back down. I didn't flinch. I stepped to the side at the last second, feeling the air rush past me as he missed by a hair. His body stumbled forward and I shoved the knife into his side without thinking. It was a clean strike, sharp, precise. He gasped, his body freezing in place for a moment, and then he turned toward me, his face twisted with pain and disbelief. "You..." I didn't let him finish. I twisted the blade, pulling it back out in one fluid motion, watching him stagger backward, blood pouring from the wound. He fell to his knees, gasping for air, his eyes wide with shock. "I told you," I said, my voice calm, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. "I'm done." He tried to speak again, but the words died in his throat. His hands came up to his side, as if he could stop the bleeding, but it was too late. The man who had hunted me for so long was finally crumbling in front of me. I didn't feel any satisfaction, not like I thought I would. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about revenge. It was just the end of something that had gone on for far too long. I knelt beside him, staring into his eyes as he bled out. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice quieter now, softer. I needed to know. After everything, I needed to understand who this man was, who had been chasing me all these years, who had made me a ghost of myself. He blinked, his face pale, his breath shallow. I don't even remember anymore. His eyes clouded over, his body slumping to the ground, and I knew it was over. He was gone. The man who had haunted me for so long, the one who had turned every corner of my life into a prison, was dead. I stood up slowly, looking around the empty, desolate landscape. The gas station, the cracked earth, the dry wind, everything was still. The world felt too quiet now. The chase was over. I wiped the blade on his jacket and slid it back into my jacket pocket, then turned and walked away. There was nothing left for me here. The night had fallen completely, the stars scattered like cold diamonds in the sky. The wind, once a dry whisper, now howled across the desert like the wail of something long lost. My footsteps were the only sound, each one ringing out against the emptiness, echoing off the worn-out buildings and the dry earth beneath my boots. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. It was over. But something tugged at me, something I couldn't quite shake. A gnawing feeling in my gut like I had just done something I didn't fully understand. Killing him hadn't been as liberating as I thought it would be. It hadn't brought any sense of closure, no sweet relief from the years of fear. It just felt final, like the closing of a door that you never really wanted to shut. I walked down the cracked road, my mind swirling. I knew I should feel something, anything, but all I felt was a strange emptiness. A part of me wondered if it had always been this way, if I had always been chasing this hollow victory, this end that didn't feel like an end at all. The whole time I had been running toward this moment, and now that it was here, I didn't know what to do with it. As I walked, my eyes caught something in the distance, a light, faint but steady. A car, headlights cutting through the desert night like a predator in the dark. I stopped, my pulse quickening. Was it him? No, impossible. He was gone. I had ended it. But still, I couldn't help the feeling creeping over me, the sense that this wasn't over, not really. I pulled the knife out again, just in case. It felt heavier now, a weight I hadn't expected to carry. I held it loosely at my side as the car got closer, the engine growling like some beast in the night. The car finally rolled to a stop beside me, kicking up dust as it halted. The window rolled down slowly, and a pair of eyes, cold and calculating, stared back at me. My heart skipped a beat. Thought you could get away that easy? The voice was familiar, deep and gravelly, and the chill in it sent a shiver down my spine. You've been running for years, but the game's never really over, is it? I didn't need to look closer. I already knew who it was. The same eyes, the same face, the same voice. Only this time, it wasn't the man I had killed. This was someone else. Someone who had been waiting in the shadows all along. Someone who had been watching. He smiled. You're not done yet. And just like that, I realized the truth. I had never been running from one man. I had been running from all of them. The shadows, the unknown, the never-ending chase. And now I was face to face with another one. I tightened my grip on the knife, the weight of it grounding me in that moment, as if I had any say in what came next. I thought about running again, about disappearing into the night and leaving it all behind. But I wasn't that person anymore. I stood my ground. Then, let's finish it. And just like that, the game began again. Monday. I don't even know why I'm jotting this down on paper instead of typing it out on my laptop. Maybe it's because I don't want this to be easily erased. Maybe it's because I'm starting to feel like nothing on my computer is really mine anymore. Whatever the reason, I just need to get this out of my head. Things have felt off, and not in the I had a bad day at work kind of way. It's deeper, like something is brushing against the edges of my reality, just out of view. I guess it started when I moved into this place. It's a third-floor walk-up in one of those older brick buildings that looks charming in the daylight but creepy as hell once the sun sets. I'm not picky, though. The rent's cheap and I don't need much. Just my desk, my laptop, and a couch that's seen better days. The problem is, this place has a personality, and not the kind you'd want as a roommate. The sounds were the first thing I noticed. It wasn't creaking wood or a dripping faucet, those are normal. This was subtler. Like a soft shuffle in the hallway when I knew no one else was home, or the faintest scrape against my bedroom window, even though there's no tree nearby. Stuff you could write off as your imagination if it didn't happen so often. Tuesday last night was the worst yet. I woke up around 3 a.m., classic horror movie timing, right? The room was so quiet it was loud. You know what I mean? Like the silence had weight, pressing in on my ears. My heart was pounding for no reason at all. I didn't hear anything at first, but then it came. A low, rhythmic tapping just outside my window. I didn't move at first. My brain was trying to rationalize it. branches, birds, whatever. But then I remembered. There's nothing outside my window, just a sheer drop to the alley below. I forced myself to sit up, each movement feeling like I was pushing against molasses. I stared at the window, trying to convince myself it was just a trick of my half-awake brain. That's when I saw it. A shape. Not a full figure, but just enough of an outline to freeze my breath in my throat. It was standing there, still as death, and I swear I felt its eyes on me. The tapping stopped, and so did my heart for a second. I scrambled for my phone, but by the time I looked back, the figure was gone. Now I can't stop thinking about it. Was it a person, a shadow? Am I losing it? Wednesday. I decided to work from home today, mostly because I couldn't stomach the idea of coming back here after dark. I spent the day jumping at every little noise, convinced I'd see that shape again. Around noon, I tried to distract myself with coffee and emails, but when I opened my laptop, I noticed something weird. My webcam light was on. It's the kind of thing you don't notice at first, but once you see it, your stomach drops. I don't even use my webcam. I covered it with a piece of tape, like people always say to do, and shut the laptop. But it didn't make me feel any better. It just felt like putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound. I couldn't sleep last night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that shape by the window, unmoving, staring. By 4 a.m., I gave up and turned the TV on for background noise. Static. Not the usual no-signal screen. This was different. A low hum crackled beneath the static, almost like a voice trying to claw its way through. I stared at it for a long time, trying to convince myself it wasn't a big deal. Maybe the cable was just glitching. Then the screen flickered, and for a split second there was an image. It was so brief I almost thought I imagined it, but I saw enough to know what it was. It was my apartment, my couch, my coffee table, and me sitting on the floor staring at the TV. I turned it off. Threw the remote across the room. My hands were shaking so bad I had to sit on them to keep still. Whoever this is, whatever this is, it's not just in my head. Friday. The tapping is back. This time it's on my door. Not the main one that leads to the hallway, but my bedroom door. It's soft, methodical, like someone's testing the wood with their fingernail. I stayed completely still, my back pressed against the wall, clutching a kitchen knife I'd grabbed after the first knock. The tapping continued for what felt like hours, but I didn't dare open the door. When it finally stopped, I had to convince myself to breathe again. I didn't sleep. Saturday, I found the camera. I don't know what made me check, but I yanked my vent cover off this morning, half expecting to find nothing but dust and spiders. Instead, there it was, a small black lens pointing straight into my living room. My stomach dropped. I ripped it out and smashed it against the floor until it was nothing but shattered plastic and wires. It didn't make me feel better. If there's one, there could be more. I spent the next few hours tearing my apartment apart, flipping furniture, checking every crevice. I found 2 more cameras, one in my bathroom, hidden behind the light fixture, and another under the lip of my kitchen counter. Whoever set this up was meticulous. They didn't just want to watch me, they wanted me to feel them watching. Sunday. I didn't think it could get worse, but it did. I woke up to find my laptop open, sitting on my desk. The webcam tape I'd slapped on was gone. My stomach churned as I realized the screen was on, displaying a single file. It was a video of me from last night. The angle was high, like it came from the corner of the room. I watched as I slept, my body restless under the covers. Then I saw it. Movement in the shadows. A figure stepped into the faint light from the street lamp outside. They stood at the foot of my bed for a solid minute before walking back into the darkness. The video ended, and a single line of text appeared on the screen. I told you, I'm watching. Monday. I didn't go to work today. Hell, I didn't even leave the apartment. I spent the whole morning pacing, checking every lock, every corner, every possible hiding spot. I wanted to call the cops, but what would I even tell them? Someone's leaving creepy videos and spying on me, but I don't know who or how. They'd laugh me out of the precinct. Around noon, I finally broke and called my best friend, Erin. She picked up on the second ring, her voice casual and warm. Hey, what's up? I didn't waste time. Erin, something's wrong. Someone's been in my apartment. That got her attention. "What, are you okay? Did you call the police?" "I don't know who it is, and they're watching me." "Cameras, Aaron. They've got cameras in here." My voice cracked as I spoke, and I hated how weak I sounded. "Okay, stay calm. I'm coming over," she said firmly. "Don't do anything until I get there." The relief was short-lived. I hung up and sat on the couch, trying to steady my breathing, but it felt like the walls were closing in. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the hum of the fridge made my skin crawl. An hour later, Erin still hadn't shown up. I called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. That's when I got the message. It wasn't a text or an email. It popped up on my laptop, unprompted, like it was waiting for me. The screen went black, and then white text appeared. "Erin's busy. She won't be coming." My blood ran cold. I stared at the screen, willing it to disappear, but it didn't. Instead, a new line appeared. "Check the hallway." I didn't want to, but my feet moved on their own. The hallway was empty except for an envelope propped against my door. My name was scrawled across the front in messy handwriting. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. Erin, tied to a chair, her face streaked with tears. Tuesday. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Erin's face. Her terrified expression burned into my mind. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching. They were controlling. The message came again, right after sunrise. "Midnight. Alley behind the bar. Come alone." I wanted to ignore it. To call the cops, to run, to do anything but play this sick game. But the image of Erin's face haunted me. I couldn't leave her. Midnight. The alley smelled like rotting garbage and damp concrete. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, and the flickering street lamp made everything feel alive. I gripped the kitchen knife in my pocket, my heart hammering in my chest. "Okay," I whispered to the darkness. "I'm here. Let's do this." For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my own breathing. Then, from the far end of the alley, a figure emerged. Tall, cloaked in shadows, their face obscured by a mask. They didn't speak. They just tilted their head like they were amused. "Where's Erin?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The figure pointed to something on the ground, a small USB drive. "What the hell is this?" I shouted. They didn't answer. Instead, they turned and disappeared into the shadows as silently as they'd come. I grabbed the USB and ran. Wednesday. I didn't wait to get back to my apartment. I found a 24-hour coffee shop with free Wi-Fi, plugged the USB into my laptop, and opened the files. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the damn thing. There were 3 videos, no titles, no timestamps, just black thumbnails. I clicked the first one. The screen showed a dimly lit room, concrete walls lined with old pipes. Erin was there, tied to the same chair from the Polaroid. Her face was pale, her eyes darting around like she expected something to leap out of the shadows. Then a voice spoke, distorted, mechanical. "Why did you come?" It wasn't a question for Erin. I could feel it aimed directly at me, as if the voice was pulling me through the screen. Erin's head snapped up, her expression changing from fear to anger. "She'll find you," Erin spat. "You think this is a game, but she's not like the others." The screen cut to static, and I slammed the spacebar to stop the video. My pulse was racing. Not like the others? What the hell was she talking about? I hesitated before opening the second file. This one showed me. It was footage of my apartment from earlier that day, the camera's angle shifting between my living room and bedroom. It wasn't just a playback, it was synced to my movements. When I paced the living room, the camera followed. When I sat on the couch, it zoomed in. At the end, the screen froze on an image of me staring out my window. Below it, text appeared. "You are exactly like the others." I slammed the laptop shut. My breath came in short, panicked bursts, and my vision swam. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Thursday. I didn't want to watch the third file, but I had no choice. Not if I wanted to find Erin. The final video started with blackness. Then a flashlight beam cut through the dark, illuminating a stairwell. It looked old, industrial, like it belonged in an abandoned warehouse. The person holding the camera moved silently, descending the stairs, the sound of their footsteps echoing softly. The camera panned to a steel door at the bottom. It creaked open, revealing the same room from the first video. Aaron was gone, but the chair remained, surrounded by a pool of dried blood. Then the camera turned, and for the first time I saw them, the Watcher. They wore a mask, blank, featureless, smooth. They tilted their head at the camera, and for a moment, it felt like they were staring straight at me through the screen. The video ended abruptly, but a new window popped up, a map. A single pin marked a location on the outskirts of town. Friday. I didn't think. I just drove. The address led to a crumbling warehouse, the kind you'd avoid even in daylight. The sky was overcast, the wind carrying a faint metallic tang. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air was stale and thick, the faint buzz of electricity humming in the background. I followed the hallway, every step echoing unnervingly. At the end, I found the steel door from the video. It opened into the same room, but this time, Erin was there. She was slumped in the chair, her head hanging forward, her wrists tied tight. "Erin!" I rushed to her, shaking her shoulder. She groaned softly, her eyes fluttering open. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Behind me, the door slammed shut. I turned to see the Watcher standing in the shadows. "You were never supposed to win," the voice rasped, mechanical and cold. "But you're interesting. Let's see how far you'll go." I didn't hesitate. I charged at them, knife in hand, but they were faster. The last thing I remember was the glint of something metallic swinging toward my head. Saturday. I woke up in my apartment. My head throbbed, and the events of the last few days felt like a fever dream. But on the table beside me was a Polaroid. It showed Erin, safe and smiling, walking out of the warehouse. Below it, scrawled in black ink, were 3 words: "You passed. For now."